means it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. Hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance fall. That is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Ways, where it's a middle path today, if for no other reason than the entirety of the topic is quite spiritual and very middle pathian. Not just in that it's spiritual, but in that the whole, in fact, point is to understand, embrace, and live the middle path. So it's exciting. It's exciting times. Middle path used to be only for supporters, and now the only middle path that is only for supporters is the Lightning Oracle Round, which is a place where you can get your answers to your questions, where you can get messages from your spiritual guides and allies. And you can do it just by being a supporter, ideally on Substack. That is where you also then will get channeled messages, or on rogue.locals.com. That is where you will also get those same channeled messages as they come through. Either of those is a great way to support. Technically on Rockfin also, although I get almost nothing from that unless you send me tips on Rockfin, in which case I do then get something. So those other places are the best places to be a supporter. You can also be on Apple Podcasts. I'm on every single podcast platform that exists, but I am also on Apple Podcasts as a subscription. And so you can get the audio to the Lightning Oracle Round, to other episodes that are in the archives as Middle Path episodes. And that's a good way to be a supporter, but you don't get the channel messages. And in most of those ways, if you're not on Rockfin, for example, you have to leave a comment, leave a request for your message or your question to be answered, because Rockfin chat is the only chat I can see while I'm live. And Rumble chat, but then I don't know if the people are supporters. So eventually, I'm sure there'll be a much better system in place where everything is streamlined in one. But those are all your options right now as to how to be a supporter of Rogue Ways. Of course, you can also donate at the link that's in every single episode's notes. You can donate either crypto or cash, and you can do so with the request to receive a message during the Lightning Oracle Round. So totally up to you. There's also, I think, a Venmo down there or a Zelle or something, whatever you like to use, if you want to include it with a note for a request. As always, when we do the Lightning Oracle Round, you can say what the question is, or you can just say, can I get an answer to my question? You don't have to tell us what the answer is, or sorry, what the question is. So happy Thursday. Welcome. We're talking about today Lucifer, Satan, Ahriman, and Jesus. These are actually three of those that I listed are just one thing. And actually, when you want to get down to it, all four are just one thing. And the thing that they all are, just to spoiler alert you, is consciousness. And none of them, another spoiler alert, are really essentially good or bad. They just are what they are. And you, as a being of free will, get to choose. What is it you want? What is it you're doing? What is your goal? And given that, you get to choose what you want. And anything you choose does have repercussions, not as punishments, but just as reactions to your choices. You will have karma. Karma is not something judging you good or bad. It is just an inert, neutral force of the universe saying, you do this, here's the reaction. That's it. Just like when you push something off a ledge, it falls, and if it's brittle, it will break. That's karma. Nobody's mad at you. The glass isn't breaking because it's angry at you. It's breaking because something happened that caused it to do so. This is how karma works. So really, the more you know, the better. The more gnosis you create within yourself, the better. The more understanding you create in your mind, the better, because then the better choices you can make given your goals. So let's get into it. Let's get into the satanic Lucifer and Ahriman and the Christ. And yes, some of these concepts are most popularized by Rudolf Steiner, but none of the concepts are actually Steiner's. So if you're familiar with these concepts, that's what you might be thinking is of Steiner. And they are most popularized, most perhaps explored most deeply, at least with these terms. And yet nothing Steiner said was new. It was new in the form of which words and which terms he used, but it's so old. It's so old and ancient, in fact, because it is just a description of the universe and of consciousness. And that's all that exists, really. And that's all any of the sages, the mystics, the spiritual traditions have ever been describing. So if you're familiar with Steiner, then you may be very familiar with these concepts. And then if you're familiar with me, you'll be familiar with how I don't really conform to any people, although I seem to be similar to many of them. And so we will be talking about things that may remind you. We'll be talking a lot about Steiner, but of course, I will give you my little twist on that, or at least a distilled way to possibly understand that if you would like. In the meantime, here is rogueways.org. This is the site where you can find my books. You can get them also on Audible, on Barnes & Noble, on Amazon, and more places around the world. If you get them from me, from my site, get a little channeled inscription in each of them. You can schedule a one-on-one session to talk things through, to receive some spiritual healing, to receive some spiritual guidance from your spiritual guides and allies, to have tarot, past life work, and more. You can read the testimony of those who have. You can go to the shop and get powerful orgone, lotus votives, and more. And you can connect with me here. There's lots of other stuff on the site. It's fun to explore. Go check out rogueways.org. Or like I said at the beginning, go to rogueways.substack.com and become a paid supporter there in order to get channeled messages as they come through, a way to connect with me and let me know if you'd like a message during the Lightning Oracle round every other week for supporters. And also to just read some good stuff. If you're a free subscriber on Substack, that's also great. You get lots of free content too. So either way, go to rogueways.substack.com and check it out. And we'll start just kind of with this. This is someone distilling. It's sort of, it's not even really a presses. It's just more of a smattering of ideas of Steiner's, especially organized in order to highlight the apocalypse that we're going through. And so remember, it's more of the removing of the veil or a heightening of consciousness than it is some time of massive destruction, although there has to be destruction. There has to be destruction if we're moving into anything, because you cannot create something without destroying something else. It's just yet another, maybe perhaps better way to think of it is transforming. You're transforming something. It's both destruction and creation are part of transformation. So this book is called, and book might be, it's a book. It's compiled by someone named maybe Liviu Plesoianu. I don't know. French? It's not even French. I don't think French has the sh. It might be Turkish. Whoever this person is, they really just grabbed like a lot of Steiner's quotes and ideas and kind of organized them, like I said, and have a little bit of commentary on it too. But it's called Apocalypse Now. The seventh trumpet is sounded. A great initiate reveals all the truths that specific occult brotherhoods are hiding from you. And I'll say too now, I don't know of any occult brotherhoods that are hiding anything from you, actually. I used to think that was a thing. And then I found out that anyone can just go and talk to them and ask them anything, and they'll tell you everything. There's certain things that a lot of these organizations, you would go through like initiations or periods of sort of waiting for more information to be given to you. But actually all of that is somewhere, especially now with the internet. Like it's somewhere. You could find it if you wanted to. There's really nothing hidden. And I don't know if there has been for decades, at least, if not longer. Some people say since the 60s, all the secret schools and mysteries were perhaps intentionally, at least by soul, by consciousness, by spirits, intentionally released, and perhaps by an organization of high initiates of various traditions, may have been sort of given the tip to go release things, but there's nothing hidden. And in some of them, like the Rosicrucians, which I've been a member of for, I think, 6 months now, in which I did so, which you've heard me talk about it before, but I became a member not because anything they are doing is what I want, or need, but because of what I already have come to in myself, through myself. My own gnosis is reflected in what they do. All of it. So if you like me and what I talk about and do, you might like them. And I've had people call them a secret society, and they're the least secret of them all. You literally can find all of their books and writings for free from their own site. So there's no secret. So if there's anyone hiding anything from you, it's really just your own fault. Like, I mean, and that's cool. You don't have to go looking for anything, but there's nothing hidden, right? There really isn't anything hidden. So wherever you're at with that, however you feel about that, that's what I've come to understand. And this person starts actually by giving some of the prophecies that Rudolf Steiner gave us. He says 100 years ago. I guess that's true, isn't it? He seems to me like much more recent than that, but I guess he did live quite a while ago. So in 1909, he anticipated the forced isolation of the healthy carriers of germs. He anticipated the public health tyranny as a direct effect of blind faith and authority in 1911. I mean, that's pretty advanced. I mean, like, there's people now who don't even see it. It's already been happening for a while. So pretty cool. And, people say Rudolf Steiner was inspired, whatever you want to think that means. Some people say he was literally speaking with angelic energies. And I don't doubt it, because I do that. I know you can do that if you choose to. I know a lot of people who do it. So I wouldn't doubt it for a second. So it makes sense. A lot of people who are very deeply in touch with themselves and very much understand who and what they are and have chosen to go deeper into that can do things like that. So it's pretty cool. I never had seen him presented as a prophet, but to be honest, I had never really looked too deeply into him, as is my tradition, to never really look too deeply into almost anyone. And what I had seen or heard of him was just smatterings that come across my radar as I move through life. I never read anything. I never listened deeply to any of his lectures. I always want to, and everything I've ever seen or heard from him that it does come across my table, I think, wow, that guy's super cool. Like, he clearly gets it. He's one of also the many people who discover me, who are already far along on their spiritual path, are like, oh, you must be a follower of Steiner because you talk about all the same ideas. And I'm like, no, I don't. Yet again, I don't know. Him and Gurdjieff are the two I'm most often, like, people are stunned that I haven't studied them. And I'm like, I'm not stunned, because I know over and over and over again, all throughout history, all throughout every tradition, people come to the same concepts, the same ideas, almost naturally as part of our evolution when we are aware, self-reflective, thoughtful, and intentional about being alive. So yeah, I'm not surprised that there ends up being similarities between people who are on that path. But I always love it, because and then when I finally do look into them, now I can't say that anymore, because like, after enough people asked me if I had ever studied Gurdjieff, I was like, well, I have to read his books now. I read one and I was like, yeah, no, we're on the same page. But now if people ask me that, I have to be like, well, technically, yes, I have read one of his books. Anyway, it's a funny thing. So Steiner's another one of those. And again, seems to be right on about so many things. So, and I think don't ask me. I'm not any kind of obviously, as I just explained, I'm no expert on Steiner. I think he's like a Christian mystic. If I was going to describe him from what I do know of him, that makes sense to me. In 1917, they say he lectured on a future vaccine that would influence the human body in such a way as to immunize it against spiritual ideas. And if you look, what's really interesting to me, if you look at autism, which is a side effect, perhaps, of some injections, let's just say, in case I put this on YouTube, I know hundreds of autistic people because I was a teacher for over a decade. So some I worked with closely for years as their private tutor. Multiple people, in fact, I've worked with for years who are very, very high functioning autism, and also one that was nonverbal, actually. And so I've seen everything, the whole range, known literally thousands, hundreds at least of people with autism, and 100% of them did seem to be highly focused on the material, right? Which is the opposite of the spiritual. It's not good or bad, it's just true, right? It's the opposing force of spiritual matter, spirit, two sides of the spectrum. So they're deeply into that maybe material side, which is in a way a sort of immunization against spirituality. But what's really ironic is I feel, and I've said this multiple times before, that even if that was their intention, and even if that is a way to characterize autism, which for me it is, then they screwed themselves, because actually every person I've known who's autistic, every single one of them was very clearly psychic to me. Their parents don't always know. People don't. That's not like a popular idea. The few people who I've talked to who are very thoughtful people and have kids who are autistic and are willing to consider things like that, when I say that, they're like, "Thank you for saying that. I thought it was just me." And I'm like, no, I've seen it again and again and again and again and again. They're some of the most gifted psychics I know. So if you are trying to push them deeper into the material and have them be very focused on that type of linear, logical, highly analytical way of thinking, you may have succeeded, but you actually then also maximized the spiritual. It's just, and a lot of people, it's not even suppressed. It's that no one gets it. And that's frustrating. It's frustrating to be highly psychic and no one gets it. So super interesting that prophecy of his. And interesting that effect, because part of what Steiner, I think, from my very slight dipping into his content, part of what he talks about is that these forces that are pushing everything to different extremes, the Luciferian energies and ideologies, what he calls Ahrimanic energies and ideologies, they push people to different extremes and try to isn't even the right word, but they maybe push people farther away from their highest spiritual evolution. But in doing so, they create the highest spiritual evolution. And this is what I've talked about over and over and over again as well, and why I say we're always winners and we always will be winners, and that nothing that we call dark or evil or destructive or horrifying on the earth could ever succeed, because all of it actually serves our highest purpose. In the meantime, it'd be cool not to suffer. It'd be cool if we could reduce the suffering for ourselves and others, or stop or prevent sort of the worst outcomes, but nothing could stop or prevent our highest spiritual outcome. So ironic for these people who are stuck in these mindsets, I guess. Makes sense to anybody who understands hermetic and universal laws, which we've also talked about on Middle Path multiple times, and Rogue Ways probably a bit. So he talks about this a while. There's a lot of different quotes this person has pulled together for that. He also prophesies the inoculation of nanobots in order to merge humans and machines, which again, 1921 was pretty extreme, pretty far out there. And the goal, he said, would be enhancing the human mind. And so, yeah, but it's also not that far out there, because if you go back that far, you can see C.S. Lewis talking about the same types of things. Also from a Christian point of view, interestingly, C.S. Lewis has books, fictional books, that describe the world perfectly. And he describes how even just the laziness and apathy of people and their pride and their ego will just lead them to happen to do evil things, even if they're not super evil. And so he's not alone in this. He's not like again, I want to emphasize, he's awesome and amazing. I'm not trying to reduce him. I'm trying to, in fact, encourage all people to understand that you're no different from him or C.S. Lewis or other people who looked around deeply at the world around them and understood the general forces and therefore where they were likely to head. Because C.S. Lewis says almost the exact same types of things. Super interesting. So here we are. We may or may not have, now we seem to have something that looks like circuitry and nanobots within many of us, at least, as shown by many scientists over the past handful of years. And maybe even before then, because what? Back in the 90s, we already had Morgellons, right? Like way back then. So how long? Who knows? But clearly, we're still here. We're still winning, and you still can't stop our spiritual evolution. He prophesied about the nuclear weapon, the atomic bomb, and he talks about it as a force that is just terrible and huge and overwhelming and stronger than the most violent electrical discharge. And again, he might have literally seen it. I mean, a lot of people see visions, see the future, see the past. Again, I'm one of them. You probably are too, if you choose to enhance that aspect of yourself. It says he prophesied the rise of Hitler. He says they'll deal with the beast who will rise up in 1933, and he said this in 1924. And look at the look at the timing there. 24. He said the beast will rise up in 1933. Where I was told by Sai Baba, who came in his Merkaba of light and channeled himself through the body of one of his, I'll just say followers. I didn't know that was going to happen, or that this guy followed Sai Baba, or that anything like that could even happen. I mean, I understood technically it was possible, but I was absolutely in no way expecting it in this moment. And neither was the guy, to be honest. And he said that by 2033, just 9 more years, guys, 2033, the Christ consciousness would return, that our dark times would be over. But up until that year, things would get worse and worse and worse and darker and darker. And so far, we're on track for that. He said it would start in 2020. And he said this to me in 2018. And he was right. And so far, that's my expectation. I'm Lindsay, so you know that I'm not going to sit here and be like, this is for sure what's going to happen, and I know it. No, but that's a pretty convincing event in my life, and so I'm expecting it. I'm not going to lie. 2033, here we go. 9 years, but as I've said many times, we're already 4 years in. It hasn't been all that bad, so I think we got this. I think we're good. He spoke about human labor being replaced by machines. Again, it was technically already happening then. This is the same thing I say about Aldous Huxley, George Orwell, and many other people who seem prophetic. And it's not that they're not, but technically what they're actually doing is reading the events of what's going on and what's been going on and where it's likely to go. So it doesn't make him less inspired, magical, and amazing. It's just also, the more we demystify these things, the more we understand ourselves and who we are and what we are. So I like to point it out. So this says the 7th trumpet is sounded. And this is, of course, based on the book of Revelations in the Bible. The use of the trumpets and the bowls and the scrolls and all the things. It's a method of timing, right? To see like where we're at. And that's a prophecy. If there was ever a prophecy, is Revelations. All sorts of discussion on whether it happened thousands of years ago or is happening now, or both. Could be both. But according to Steiner, the 6th angel began to blow his trumpet at the beginning of the 1840s, and he'll continue to sound it until the end of the 20th century, when the 7th trumpet will start to sound. So then there's also the woes, and this is saying we're in the midst of the 3 woes. And so civilized humanity is going through this age of consciousness of the soul. And if we follow the trumpets, this actually began in 1413. And like, this is all kind of like, well, I mean, like it began at the beginning of time, like, or it began when we fell from the golden age into the long descent towards the dark age that we're in now. It began tens of thousands of years ago. Actually, but whatever, like it began whenever you want to think of it beginning, depending on what your goal is and where you're looking. So he talks about this, the incarnation of Lucifer and Ahriman, and he talks about them incarnating. He says, to give the precise names, the Ahrimanic or Mephistophelian spirits are known in medieval times as the spirits of Satan. who must not be confused with Lucifer. This is what Steiner said. He says, just as there was an incarnation of Lucifer in the flesh and an incarnation of Christ in the flesh, so before only a part of the third millennium of the post-Christian era has elapsed, there will be in the West an actual incarnation of Ahriman in the flesh. Humanity on earth cannot escape this incarnation of Ahriman. It will come inevitably, but what matters is that humans shall find the right vantage point to confront it. If you read like nothing else about it and understood nothing else about it, this is the point that I'm always saying, that I hope you're always getting, that I hope you are living more and more, which is that whatever humanity is going through is inevitable. Not what happens along the way, right? Not what happens along the way, but the actual transformation humanity is going through. It's inevitable. The whatever we want to call the Christ consciousness coming is inevitable. It's an evolution and an involution of spirit into matter, of matter evolving towards spirit, of spirit evolving down into matter, of us here, humans, holding it in the middle. That's what I'm always talking about, right? Middle path. As we're halfway between heaven and earth. Spiritually, our heart is halfway between both. Our heart is where the two sides merge, where the two triangles cross, right in the center there, where the two circles cross. Over and over and over, I come back to this again and again because it's really the only thing we're doing, and it's the only thing that matters. We are just bringing our matter purified more and more into spirit and bringing our spirit evolved more and more into matter. And so, no, we can't escape that transformation. We can't escape that evolution. It's what we're doing. We wouldn't want to escape it. If when we die, we pass out of this body and we go into the in-between, the beyond the veil, whatever you want to call what happens when we drop our bodies. And somebody there was like, so, I mean, do you want to stop now? Or like, do you want to keep evolving? Like, none of us would be like, nah, I'm done. I'm good. Just this half-baked thing. Like, that's cool. And if you did, you wouldn't be here. So get over it. But what matters, as he points out, again, the most important thing, if you grasp nothing else, is that people find the right vantage point to confront it. And the right vantage point, in my humble opinion, is the middle path. and it's his too, by the way. We agree on that. So he talks about Ahriman and Lucifer, and over and over, and this idea that they've incarnated and that Christ has incarnated, and that these are three incarnations of like high-level spiritual energies, but that Lucifer and Ahriman are these two halves of like a satanic energy. And I'm going to talk about this not as humans incarnating, but as points of consciousness that every soul embodies along the path. And that collectively we all embody along the path. So we're fractals, fractal emanations. Some people get to Christ consciousness a little early and they're like, whoa, look at me. And everyone's like, dude, look at that master. Why is he walking on water and turning water into wine? Is crazy. And then eventually you get there too. Right? And collectively, at some point, everybody is now at Christ consciousness, and there is no one back behind us at the Ahrimanic or the Luciferian. Everybody has gone forward. So it's happening individually and it's happening collectively. And I don't know if Steiner says that or not, but that's what I'm saying to you. And many people have said as well. And so he does. He talks about Lucifer and Ahriman as incarnating specifically. He talks about Hitler as, I think as Lucifer, and that Ahriman is like yet to be known. Like we literally even now don't know who is Ahriman, and perhaps many people are then calling what Steiner's calling Ahriman the Antichrist, right? Who will come and unite the world and end war and do all of this stuff. And if so, like this is the tamest Antichrist vision we could ever have. But that doesn't make it less serious what humans' righteous path is through this Ahrimanic energy. So Lucifer he describes as already having come. Lucifer came with the light, right? He's the light bearer. And Lucifer came and he said like, "Hey guys, here's fire. Now you can have technology. Now you can make swords and stuff. You can just be like in your ego and you can just run around indulging in everything and just like slaying if you want to slay. And like, isn't this great?" And people were like, "Hell yeah, it is. Let's make war everywhere we can. Let's control all of culture and society with our technology." And cool, whatever. It's got us pretty far, right? And this is one of Steiner's points too, somewhere along the way, many points along the way, that the Luciferian wasn't all negative. Whatever you want to call the Luciferian, that impulse of creation, of stealing fire from heaven and stealing the fire of the gods and holding it in yourself, being able to create something, it can be intoxicating. It can be really ego-y, right? It can be really indulgent, debaucherous perhaps, but it's not in itself evil. In fact, using creative force to create is part of what you came here to understand about yourself. So not horrible. I don't know if he gets to like who is the Luciferian incarnation. I really didn't come to read this whole book, so I just wanted to touch into it in this way. But you know, he talks about the Christ incarnation as Jesus. The Luciferian, I don't know who. And the Ahriman will be a specific person too. And so again, I'll say, sure, but there hasn't been just one Christ incarnation. It's not even that there was one Christ incarnation that was then, you know, known around the world in different ways. It's that there's been masters who reach the Christic consciousness again and again and again throughout the yugas and the history of Earth. And we've talked about this before, and maybe we can find it really quick just to touch on it for a moment, but there's many, this isn't it. Let's say Christ-like deities in many cultures. I don't know if this is I don't think that's it. There's no, this isn't it either. I don't know. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So there's Krishna, we have Mithra, we have Dionysus, we have Attis, we have Horus. This is just a few. This list goes on. There's like 45 of them that I know of or that I've heard of. And they're all born of a virgin, born near the winter solstice. Like there's a star in the east often. They perform miracles. They're bringing this same sort of message to people that people are the sons and daughters of God and that they could be humbled within that, but also know their worth and their value and not let anyone be the intermediary between them and God. Right. And that there is just one God is also the message of these, which is also very interesting. You know, in all of these, a lot of these cultures, that is confusing for some people because it seems polytheistic, but all of them actually do point to, if not calling it a God, they call it the source or something like it, right? The ultimate one thing from which everything else came. And that's actually a very important understanding for humans to have, especially as we go through the Luciferian and the Ahrimanic energies or consciousnesses that take over collectively. And so, yeah, there is a person named Christ. We call him Christ, but actually he's one of many who have attained that level of consciousness. And so it isn't about one incarnation. It isn't about one person. Although at any given time, there may be somebody who can hold that consciousness and represent it in physical form, but that is not like that thing. That thing is actually just a consciousness, and it's a consciousness that everyone has the capacity to hold or be, or has held and been on their way to reunification with that one source or that one God or that one highest consciousness or whatever it is you want to call that. So I don't know where Steiner stands on that stuff. And I don't technically personally care, but that's my take on Lucifer, Ahriman, and Christ. And if you look at it, he's also very positively, hitting on that Lucifer and Ahriman are two parts of Satan, because all Satan is, as we've also talked about many times on Middle Path, is the I almost said the destroyer. What is it? The resistor. No, the person who puts the blockage in your path. The I love it when I forget words. The antagonist. It's the Saturnian energy of the universe. It's the Saturnian energy of consciousness. It's a perfectly non-evil thing that exists in the world, in consciousness, in the universe. And its purpose is to give you the roadblock that you then have to realize you can get over, and that you transcend it, and that it can't stop you. And that is what Satan is. Please, adversary. Thank you, Greg. He's the adversary. And the adversary is not an evil person. Because look at all the adversaries in your life. Are they evil? No. They're just like representing blockages for you. They're representing issues or representing problems. And then every time you confront them and move through them, you have gone to a higher place in yourself. You have risen up in your ability and your consciousness and everything. So there's nothing wrong with it. And I am not saying then, therefore, you should go be Luciferian or be Ahrimanic. I mean, I don't care. I'm not really attached. You should do whatever you want to do. But to think of it as evil, I think, is to do it a disservice to yourself. And so the Ahrimanic is no different. And the Ahrimanic is what we have yet to face. The Ahrimanic is supposedly like right now. And it is. I see it right now. It's quite obvious, actually. And but supposedly, again, there's going to be like a person, which again, I think would be best associated with the idea of the Antichrist. And all of this is good to think about too, because when that person arrives, if that's how it's going to be, and it seems like it is, then you won't fear that person. You'll just see that person is just a representation of the collective consciousness, so that we can have the barrier or the blockage or the thing for which we should all learn to overcome. And that you don't have to do anything special for that to happen, but be yourself. But be you, be authentic, be intentional about being a spiritual being, and you'll just continue to grow. And so will everyone else. And that's what will happen. So you can't stop it. You wouldn't want to stop it. That level of adversarial energy actually purifies and crystallizes exactly what you are. And here you go down the path, spiritual evolution. So this is just a random blog. It says Lucifer and Ahriman part 1. And so he summarizes it pretty well. He says, lots of people know about Lucifer. Some people picture him with red horns and a pointy tail sitting on a steamy rock throne in hell. Others picture a white guy lurking on a lonely roadside, waiting for a country boy with a fiddle or a guitar to come by for a healthy competition. Then there's Lucifer as a fallen angel, used to be God's right hand, but went to the dark side instead. But Steiner had a slightly different take on the devil and his purposes. And so here, this person's quoting Bobby Mathern in his review of Steiner's book, The Influences of Lucifer and Ahriman. So there's a whole book by Steiner you can check out if you want to read in depth about it. And he says, in Christian theology, the forces of Christ are set against the forces of the devil, who represent in one figure all that is evil, and one is exhorted to abjure all that is of the devil. This might lead one to wonder, how is the knowledge of good and evil bad? Isn't that what the devil in the Garden of Eden wanted to share with Adam and Eve? Steiner divides the devil into two beings, Lucifer and Ahriman, and shows us how neither is bad per se. Each provides gifts to human beings that further our evolution, and that it is us who must learn to balance these gifts in our individual lives. His recommendation for a solution to the problem of the devil is to transcend the tendency towards either Luciferic frenzy or Ahrimanic tedium by creating a spirit-filled synthesis of the two in our lives from now on. And that is an excellent little precis right there. That's a very, very astute and well done. And there's also this handy table here. It has Luciferic traits and Ahrimanic traits. So Luciferic is sort of like I was talking about, that like fire of creation, which then causes us to be just like bold and proud and super active in our creation and like domination. It talks about unification, but generalization. So like Rome trying to unite the world, perhaps, using one language instead of many. It says gnosis and speaking and thinking. Gnosis, very particularly meaning the discovery of God within, or of wisdom within, and of yourself as a divine being. Oration and thinking. Again, you can see all of these things in the sort of old world, right? In our known history. The information will be qualitative rather than quantitative. Fantasy, illusion, and superstition would reign. We can see that too, definitely, all throughout this old world sort of history. Spirit permeated cosmology. We see everything connected to spiritual or spirit-based ideologies. He says eating and drinking without spirituality, which did change, or it is, yeah. Some people do it and some people don't, I guess. It feels like a very, very old tradition for me, but I do sort of see that, especially, again, I keep going back to Rome. I wonder how Steiner feels about Rome being like the perfect Luciferian energy, but it seems that way to me, at least. And we see this like feasting, right? The drunken feasting. And so, yeah, eating and drinking without spirituality. Flexibility, airiness, the high flight of Icarus. So that's right, that whole myth of Icarus. He builds his wings, he flies too close to the sun, his wings melt because they're made of wax, he falls, and I think he dies, right? And then the Ahrimanic traits, what we are in now, is tedium and boredom. Oh God, yes. I mean, think about it. Think about how much we have at our fingertips and how bored people are. Look at when you were a kid, you probably said too, I'm bored. Oh my God, you had like Ataris and right? All this stuff. Once I went outside, my feet were on the ground, I was barefoot and climbing trees. I was never bored. But whenever I was like in culture, in society, like, oh God, the boredom, even though everything is known and handed to you on a plate, so tedious. Diversity and particularization. We can see this in manufacturing, right? In the new age here. We can see it in our politics. Many languages, so we're kind of going back to that sort of thing as well. Statistics, proof, literal reading, especially of the gospel. Quantitative, so very analytical. And this is our materialist. This is, the whole worldview that I was just criticizing in that recent episode of the sins of scientism. Could also have been read as the sins of Ahrimanic life. Concrete, sensory-based materialism, mathematical. So yeah. And technological advances, very, very technological. But if you look at the technological, it is all of these things, actually. It's all of the Ahrimanic things. So it makes sense too. He says, in short, this is the writer of the blog again. In short, Lucifer embodies passion, overindulgence, expansion, beauty, hedonism, bigger, better, and more, more, more. Ahriman, on the other hand, embodies coldness, separation, exactitude, control, contraction, compartmentalized, tighter, smaller, and less, less, less. So again, if you look at the writers like C.S. Lewis, like Aldous Huxley, like George Orwell, whatever you think or don't think about whatever secret societies or government organizations they were connected with, you can see that they saw this exact same spirit of the time, this exact same zeitgeist, and this exact same trend. And then they often spent their time clarifying it, showing it to people. Like, look, this is where we're headed. This is what we're doing. There's all kinds of argument about which of them wanted what, but they are all just describing what they see, actually. This blog goes on to say, Steiner said that Lucifer was incarnated onto the earth into a human form during the 3rd millennium before Christ was born in the far east of China. Since Christ incarnated in the Middle East, Steiner then foretold that Ahriman would incarnate onto the earth in the West during the 3rd millennium after Christ's death, or about 2000 CE. So it's possible Ahriman is alive right now and is 24 years old. And if so, he's born in the West. And I mean, but time is weird. Maybe it was a couple years before that. Maybe he was born in 2012, right? Like maybe that was part of 2012's magic and energy. Whatever it is, he may be born now and it may be incarnating here. And you see how he went from East to Middle East to West as these 3 points of consciousness that are all evolving and holding different forms along a polarity, right? along a spectrum, and that it's all actually pushing us towards crystallizing ourselves, crystallizing our intention, purifying our consciousness so that we all reach Christ consciousness. And again, I don't know that he says that specifically, but he is talking about that either way. So yeah, that seems to be what is actually going on right now. And so here's someone again summarizing a specific lecture by Steiner, The Influences of Lucifer and Ahriman. And he basically says all the same things. Like, if you've watched Middle Path for a while, like, none of this is new to you. If you've studied any other major spiritual tradition esoterically enough, symbolically enough, then you've understood all of this. So really what would be new to anyone who hasn't studied Steiner then would be just the labeling of what is Luciferian, what is Ahrimanic. And all of it's satanic, but none of it is satanic in the way that, the Church of Satan or some of the most like debased amongst us think it is. That's just, like I've said many times, is like a lot of these people just have no idea what's actually going on. And I don't know what they think they're doing, but I think they think they're doing something like old and ancient and evil, and they're actually just being like assholes and ignorant assholes. But yeah, Greg in the chat said, let's find him and kill him. No, again, we couldn't avoid it if we tried. Even if we killed whoever we thought the incarnation of Ahriman would be, it doesn't change that where humans are at right now consciously is an Ahrimanic consciousness. Not every human, right? I'm not, many other people are not, but in general, when we look out at the world, that is what's happening right now. It has helped form many of us. We have it within us. I had to go through my Ahrimanic phase hardcore. I was a communist. That's very Ahrimanic. It's exceptionally Ahrimanic. I didn't know that at the time. Now I can see it quite clearly. And I had to do that in order to burn out of me everything that was my adversary. It was all within me. And this is the point, right? We're going through the Ahrimanic phase. And if there's an Ahriman in physical form, it doesn't even matter. That's like not the point at all. It couldn't matter because I know you were kidding, Greg. I'm sorry. I like this point because I think a lot of people think like this. And it couldn't matter because we are all evolving along that path either way. In fact, we might want to say, please, Ahriman, incarnate so we can get through this. Right? So that we can move through into the middle. So that we can take the two extremes and synthesize them together and become the one thing that we all always were. So he says, human beings are dwellers in two worlds. Sound familiar? Our uniqueness, he says, amongst the creatures of the earth lies in this role that we have as half beast, half angel. And this is the theme of every single tradition too, that we are base matter, our lust and our things that are of just the body and the senses is not purified yet, is not infused with the spirit, and that the spirit is the other half of us, but it's disconnected. And so we have to work to bring it back into us in order to be a whole human. He says a dynamic tension exists because of the contrary demands which living in each of these realms places on us. And they are pretty contrary seeming. To bring them together is like no small feat. We're doing big work here. This is the great work, in fact. This is alchemy. Everything that he's talking about is alchemy. Alchemy is just the symbolism of this process. That's it. Just really demystify all of this. You bring it down to a very simple place, and it's easy then to understand what you're doing here, what we're all doing here. So yeah, he's right too, that a long-held view has been that, of course, one should always give way to the heavenly or spiritual. The alternative is to succumb to the earthly, the fallen, or the evil. But actually what it is that we're bringing the two together and that we're in the middle path. He talks about it in psychology, talks about it in all these different ways, that these two extremes are actually something that needs to be synthesized and brought back together. And there's really nothing else we haven't talked about except, this idea is actually that Steiner got the concept of Ahriman from the Zoroastrianism of ancient Persia, and that Ahriman was the evil god or the lord of lies who tempted men and women to believe that they were solely earthly beings. And so it's true, like that, whatever we want to call it, it doesn't matter. But this purely materialist, the sins of scientism, as I said, is that we're to be convinced that we have no such thing as spirit or soul, that there is nothing kind of beyond matter or underlying all matter, that there is no single source from which everything emanated and that everything is returning. And that we are not then, in fact, inspired at all. And also then when you go deeply into that worldview, you're not responsible for anything. Nothing matters. There's no need for ethics or morals because it doesn't matter, because you're just a flesh being that happens to live in a mechanistic nightmare. It also gives rise to the ideology of the matrix, not the matrix in the sense of that is real, which is that there is literally this universe in which we're developing, and that is literally a matrix. But the matrix, that idea that we are stuck here, that we're trapped here, that we got tricked into incarnating and now something is feeding off of us and we can't get out, like that is an Ahrimanic view of the world, is just as mechanistic, just as destructive, and just as disconnecting you from your true self as that scientism, right? As that materialism. It's no different. So this says the influence of Ahriman has grown through the centuries. So again, if you want to think of it as a specific being, if you want to think of these things as specific beings incarnated or not, then yes. But if you want to see what I think is reality, which is just consciousness in general, human consciousness, the collective consciousness, this has grown through the centuries, this idea that we are just flesh, that it is mechanistic here, that scientism is the way to go, that materialism, that has grown, that we aren't spirit, that we aren't souls, that there is nothing you could call God or universal light or love or any of that, like then that has grown, right? We used to be much deeper in our spirituality. It wasn't a very effective understanding of ourselves that we used to have, but at least we had that. We've pretty much lost that almost completely in the modern world. It's almost completely gone. And soon it might be even more highlighted just how much you're asked to completely absolve yourself of it, pretend that you're not that. Who knows? It's already gotten pretty extreme. Maybe it can't go much more extreme than this. We'll see, maybe. But again, it goes into sort of the ideas that both Luciferian and Ahrimanic consciousnesses or beings or whatever you want to think of it as have given us gifts, especially in their adversarialism. That's a word now. And that we have grown and crystallized and purified on the way. So, what's true though is that both the Luciferic and the Ahrimanic have truth for us. We should not reject them. We should see that we are the creative beings. We should see that it is okay sometimes to enjoy our senses and indulge in them, especially in a balanced way. It is good to see that we are highly capable and be proud of ourselves in many ways without being the type of prideful that puts us above others, right? So when we have that in a balanced way, it's a beautiful gift. And same with the Ahrimanic, to see that we can separate things out so much that we can create really, really highly attuned and specialized and specific devices and methodologies and ways of understanding, right? Like that's cool to see how far away or how deep we can get into the materialist. Nothing quite wrong with that. To be able to craft the physical world around us in very specific ways, there's nothing evil about that. But to do it in a very balanced way would still keep in touch with nature, with ourselves, with our souls, and still allow for people to experience their spiritual selves and celebrate it together. So both are good. They're not bad. They're not evil. We're not doing anything super dark here. we're just growing together. I don't know if there's anything else here that we really need. I did like this visual, at least, where they have the sort of spiritual the spiritual side of Lucifer, the light bearer. Like we said, there was a lot more connection to ghosts and spirits, and spiritualism literally was still big a while ago. It's been just dying more and more. And that the deeply materialist is the Ahrimanic, but in between is the Christ consciousness, which is both at once and the highest form of consciousness. I don't think there's anything else here I really care about, so we can move on. What I was interested in too was that I used my spiritual channels and I asked to be shown exactly what the Ahrimanic looked like right now here on Earth in my culture, so here in the West. And I had over and over again, like, protesters who go glue themselves to the streets, and the people who break down crying in Times Square when Trump won the election in 2016, and people sucked into their devices and whatever, transhumanists, but especially just apathy. Just apathy, laziness, and entitlement over and over again. Apathy, laziness, and entitlement. Apathy, laziness, and entitlement. Over and over again, I was shown this. And I was like, is that all? And they were like, yeah, that's enough. That's pretty destructive. I was like, that's true. Like, that's fair. And when you look at all of the different things that we've been talking about in this Ahrimanic age we're in, those are the exact traits that are the height of the materialist self, especially raised in this culture where we've had all of this materialistic living, and indulged in it so much and disconnected so far from nature. Like, we don't really have the idea of self-responsibility anymore. In fact, so far gone is that concept that we genuinely believe it matters who's president. That's a sad delusion we've fallen into. It couldn't possibly matter who is our president if every person just took self-responsibility. It'd be like a neat thing. You're like, oh yeah, there's like that guy and he's over there. And I mean, he fills a role, but he has no power over me. And he has no power over you, because we actually control our lives and ourselves. And we care about it, right? And we are connected to nature still, and we are connected to each other. And we're not just feeling entitled, like everybody should just bring us whatever. Like the people who say, like, this is like the only like crazy thing that I was born onto Earth and now I have to pay to be alive. And I'm like, this is one of the most ignorant things I could hear a person say. Like, what did you think all of time and space was going to entail for you? So you were supposed to just be born. You're so entitled that you were supposed to just be born into a world of endless plenty in which you never had to work for it. No, that's never going to be true. You always are going to have to take, and when you don't take responsibility for yourself and don't create for yourself in conjunction with nature and your highest self and all the people around you and everything that's good, true, and beautiful, when you don't, then someone else will. And if there is an Ahriman that comes into a singular being and is presented in front of us, it will be the person who does it all for you. And you won't like it. So get ready. But you won't be in that scenario. You won't be one of the people who is swept along by that if you know better. So it's not that person's evil. It's not that there's some representation of the deepest, darkest demons of hell incarnate here to like torture all of humanity. It's that humanity created this by being it and by abdicating itself from its own responsibility for itself. So somebody's going to come take it for you. And I've been talking about that the whole time. So here's just a further exploration of what I was shown is the Ahrimanic consciousness of our time. And it's this victim mentality. It's the perfect Ahrimanic mentality. It's got a little bit of the Luciferian in it too. It's not gone yet. We still have all that very prideful, indulgent, or maybe hedonistic sort of side of us. The need for recognition, excessively thinking about injustices, excessively thinking you have to find the problems because you don't have enough to do, because you don't take responsibility for yourself. You're so separated from nature and reality. Everything's been handed to you so easily that you can come up with the most insane things to feel victimized about. Blaming others for anything about yourself at all. Blaming anybody for anything about your life. Very Ahrimanic. A sort of moral elitism. We see this all the time in these people. Morally, I'm better than you. Look at what you can do when you genuinely believe you are morally superior to people. You know what you can do, whether this was real or fake or staged or not. You can get on a roof and kill a president because you're morally superior to him and he's evil. So it's your duty actually to get rid of him. You're morally superior to people, so you can trap them in a camp because they won't put on a mask or inject themselves with something, and you're better than them. So this moral elitism is super dangerous, super high level in this Ahrimanic age. Being unwilling to forgive, having that sense of entitlement, having that lack of empathy, having a lack of trust, and hopelessness and passivity, which I'm calling apathy, right? Hopelessness and passivity. And if you couldn't look around and see that these things are just exceptionally high level right now, that most people seem to be acting this out, or at least it's highly encouraged by all of media everywhere. And so therefore contagiously spreading, especially through the youth, then I don't know where you're at, but this is Ahrimanic life we're living. And like I say, like many people have said before me, like Steiner, I think, says too, seems to say, that right there in the middle is actually the sweet spot. Right there in the middle. We're at the middle again between heaven and earth. We have a soul, we have a body. Here we are being both. There's the earth below us, it's matter. There's heaven above us, it's spirit. Here we are in the middle of it. We have our chakra system. We have our toroidal system. One toroid is these top 3 chakras, our throat, our third eye, our crown. One toroid is our bottom 3 chakras, our solar plexus, our sacral, our root. And right in the middle is the heart, right at the overlap of these 2 toroidal systems, just like we see here in the Vesica Pisces, which is the union of opposites. And right in the middle, right in the union of all opposites, there is this heart and this image, because that's also what's in the middle of you as a being. That is actually the space where the Ahrimanic and Luciferian meet the Christic and combine in order to have pure, actual balance as a human being, where you are when you've purified all of your mind and all of your deep, hedonistic, materialist urges and aspects of self into one loving place, that you love all of yourself, which means you love all of creation, which means that in your best moments, you even forgive all of the people who are still acting out the deepest Ahrimanic and Luciferian aspects of all of us. It's a human consciousness. They're not different from you. You did it too. If not in this life, some other one. And if you're listening to this and thinking about all this, you're probably here right now to bring us right to the center of that heart. Right there in the center of yourself. It's probably what you came to do. And I'm glad you're here doing it. So thank you for being here and being you. Thank you for confronting the Ahrimanic and the Luciferian and synthesizing them inside of yourself. Thank you for that alchemy that you've been doing multiple lifetimes as a soul. And for the continued alchemizing of this, so that you will create the Philosopher's Stone, which is actually just your deepest, most purified, most crystallized, having gone through all the adversarial energies and come out united within yourself. Self. It's just you. You're the Philosopher's Stone. So good job. Good job doing that. Bringing that Christic consciousness here by 2033 at the latest. So let's go. And until then, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Yeah, come on, Rat Kings, baby. It's the rap machine. Yeah, check it. Gray bearded pirate, my motherfucker unknown. Yeah, the part of the process, man, just watch this. Cause this shit's about to get crazy like a mosh pit. We lost it, toss it, let's start it again. Cause now with technology, with smarter men and women, this is the beginning, not the end. And this is the message of hope that I send. Look on your TV, it's a culture of death. They'll keep on lying to the very last breath. We keep on striving and spreading the truth. It's hard to survive in this world for the youth. The door is closed, the old world is dead. Let's have an age of understanding instead. I'll include you and you include me. Let's see what we can build with some positivity. Let's go, you're moving too slow. Let me see your hands if you know what I know. Come on.
Rap like mummy, ain't no dummy in my rhyming. Started flowing freestyling, now they rhyming loud silence. On with the violence, bodies piling with the gray-bearded pirate. On your TV in 4K 3D virtual reality. Casualty of urban warfare. I know but I'm not scared, just prepared and aware. Shining my light through the tunnel of hope. Into the rope, but I'ma give it one more pull. Till the family is full. Take the bull by the horns and lead it to the slaughter. That would be harder and you would be softer. Sometimes I'm a monster, and you forever imposter. With your champagne and lobster. This royalty, the way it was supposed to be. Hopefully the new door opens and the old one closes. With way more focus and growth to mold us. And the truth that they should have told us.
To them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet. Everyone got a gift, everyone got a light. They want you to forget that ish, cause they can't dim the bright. The positive vibration takes you past the sign shackles. From the sewers and the alleys in the moving castles. Who these assholes really serving with an exposed Achilles surgeon around the corner lurking to prove ascension trumps perversion. Learn them to catch fish and unplug the signal. Show them the simpletons now build the fucking temples.